The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Hello, welcome to Stargate to the Abyss. I'm your host, Richard Gerlach. With me, as always, is Michael Patrick Hicks.
Hello.
The master himself, Matt Brandenburg.
Hey, people.
And we have a very special guest, fellow reviewer, Tracy Robinson.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Great.
Good, okay. Like I mentioned a little bit ago, I'm waking up, so
Yeah.
I start forgetting things. That's why.
Get that coffee in your veins. You start mainlining coffee. That always helps.
Just a bit.
Welcome to the show, Tracy.
Thanks. I'm glad to finally, I've listened to your podcast at least, 5 or 6 episodes, so I'm excited to be here.
Perfect.
Hey, I have
That has to
30-minute
be a new record.
30-minute commutes. I've got to spread the love around to all my different favorites. So
I feel that.
Yeah, totally. Since I don't have a commute anymore, my podcast listening has gone down to 1.
Yeah.
I have an
from
hour.
March to now, or when I started back in August, there was no podcasts. Nothing.
Yeah.
I have an hour commute, so that commute's either podcast or audiobooks.
Yeah, I had to call it quits on audiobooks just because I don't have a commute and I can't really listen to the stuff I enjoy with 2 toddlers running around.
I mean, you can't listen to that new Nick Cutter book with your 2 toddlers.
I wish I could.
It's
Maybe
got some really amazing scenes with a guy ripping out his own tooth and
Nice.
someone pulling out his own veins. I think your toddlers
cool.
will enjoy that a lot, Mike.
I think they would too. Maybe I will have to give that a listen.
Well, I mean, the last full book I finished audio was Ritualistic Human Sacrifice. So you could go with that.
Oh, nice.
That book's really fucked up. I think your toddlers would really enjoy that one, Mike.
I'll tell you guys, if you've read it, you have to try the audio because Anderson Prunty narrates it, and he is just perfect. It's amazing. I just sat there in my car oh my gosh, what is happening?
That book's
it was
really
great.
fucked up.
Well, Matt was looking for more CV Hunt books to try out, so that could be a good one to go with, Matt.
All right, I'll put that on my list.
Oh no.
That one
Honestly,
and Cockblock. Do it.
I think Matt would really enjoy Rituals of Human Sacrifice because it does have a lot to do with, for lack of a better term, shit. And we know that Matt really enjoys that, so.
I thought we were past this.
Well, I mean, there's definitely artistic expression happening.
Yes.
Matt's a coprophiliac.
No.
Oh no.
Do not spread this stuff.
All right then. I'll see you guys later.
Oh, no. I don't need any weird messages.
Well, I'll check the audio for that. That book is really good. But Tracy is here to talk about an anthology that she's working on with Sci-Fi and Scary. But before we dive into this anthology and talk about horror fiction, specifically body horror, I think we're going to be diving into a bit today. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah.
But before we do that, we should dive into stuff that we have watched this last week and recommend. I'm going to go first with a Shudder exclusive, May the Devil Take You 2. It is an Indonesian horror movie that's pretty much like Indonesian Evil Dead. It's a sequel to May the Devil Take You, which you can watch on Netflix. And this one takes the first movie and just does everything a sequel needs to do. It just gives you more of the first one. And it ups in scares, it ups in tension, it ups in gore. And it is a wild, fun ride, and I couldn't recommend it enough.
Okay, so you had mentioned, and maybe you said that one we had talked about this with Gemma Files a while back, but
Yes.
you had said that the first one is kind of like Well, you just said that Evil Dead. Is the second one like Evil Dead 2, or is it completely?
No, it's still more. It's not as comical as Evil Dead 2 is. It's like, so the first one is there's this Indonesian woman, and her family is related to this kind of curse that the father tried to summon a demon, and she goes back to her childhood home to like stop this tragedy from befalling her family. And in the second movie, like, she's survived the first one, and she's roped into like a bigger picture of this curse and this demons where these people force her into a new location because they know her backstory, and she ends up fighting against demons and possession again, just like the first movie.
Sounds cool.
And it is batshit. It's not like humorous like Evil Dead 2 is, but like there's really good stunt work. There's really good gore effects. The tension is like super high, and the main character is such a badass. You can't help but root for her every time she's like going against these demons.
That sounds pretty sweet.
I highly recommend them. They are lots of fun. They got some good gore effects, as I've said. Indonesia's kind of killing it for Asian horror right now. Like between this and Impedagore, I'm like, give me more Indonesian horror. I just need to see more of this stuff. Because I don't know what it is, but like Japanese horror was big for a while, and I still enjoy those old Japanese horror movies from like 20 years ago. But now it's Indonesia's turn, and Indonesia's showing us that like they can do some really freaky stuff. Like, have you guys seen VHS 2?
No.
Nope.
Nope.
You guys can unfuck that to steal from Shane Keen. So there's a VHS 2. There's a short film called Safe Haven. If you watch VHS 2, just find the short called Safe Haven. It is a found footage short that is co-directed between the guy who made The Devil Take You and the guy who did The Raid.
Oh, nice.
And it is one of the best found footage movies you'll ever see. It's only like 20 minutes long, but it's still like one of the best found footage movies you'll ever see. It's fucking insane.
That sounds amazing.
And I don't want to say any more for the sake of spoilers, but it just keeps on going in a direction you don't expect it to go in. And by the time it hits the end, you're like, wow, that was really fucked up. But highly recommend both of those. Wow. Mike, what about you?
Nothing. I've been busy editing my new book and dealing with family. So it has been a really rocky kind of week with not a lot of reading or relaxing. So I'm just going to toss the baton over to Matt.
If it makes you feel better, Mike, I'll put this on the podcast. One of my family members blocked me on Facebook over a meme I posted. So
what was the meme?
It was a picture from Assassination Classroom, the anime.
Okay.
And the top one said, in Japan, and it's just a picture of ramen, and they're talking about the ramen. And the bottom is, in Texas, and someone has a gun in the ramen.
And a family member blocked you for that?
Yes.
Do they live in Texas?
Yes. But I got it from someone who lived in Texas.
How close of a relation are they? Was this somebody you actually cared about?
My aunt.
Oh.
Were you close to her? Or is this just kind of like nothing?
Not anymore.
Well, I guess not. If she's blocking you, obviously it's not.
So, I mean, I'm dealing with that. I'm dealing with family shit too, man. It sucks, but I feel
God, I am so glad I'm off Facebook. That was such a poison. I blocked my father on Facebook, so that should tell you how much I value that site. Where every conspiracy lunatic has their day.
Yeah.
so,
I think my dad would sign on there on Facebook, like, what are you up to? I was like, oh, I'm just looking at Obama's birtherism. Okay, Dad, thanks. Good update.
All right, bye, Dad.
Yep.
Good talk.
I just use it for pictures of my kids sometimes, and then that's about it. It's not my favorite.
Yeah, I use it as shit post. That's really what I use it for.
I would be happy with no social media at all, but Unfortunately, as an author in 2020 who is not Bentley Little, I can't get away with it.
Right. It's kind of that. It's that curse. That's where it's like, I haven't been on Facebook in months, but and I keep thinking about getting rid of it, but I'm like, well, no, I need it just in case, like to announce when we do new episodes and stuff like that. And I did check it last week, and I had like messages from like months ago, and I had like a really weird message about somebody finding me somewhere and they needed something from me. I was like, I don't know who you are. And I'm like, hopefully you're okay. That was like from 3 months ago.
So Matt, what any recommendations you have?
We had talked about this months ago, so I won't go into too many details, but I'm almost done with Laird Barron's Worst Angels.
Nice.
Yes, and I've read the first two and absolutely loved Isaiah Coolidge and that whole what Laird Barron's doing with this kind of mystery PI thing. And this one is great. And Mike, I think you had said this too when we had talked about it, but it feels a lot looser than the first two.
Yeah. Has he broken out his Jade War Club yet?
Not yet.
Oh, that's so good when he does.
He just went to California. That's where I'm at.
Okay.
So if you remember that. But yeah, it's really loose. He kind of goes in a lot of different directions. And so it's like I've been trying to figure out how he's going to tie all these threads up and make it all kind of coherent and make sense. It's still great. It's still an awesome book. And there's some amazing he definitely does dabble a little bit more into the horror and cosmic horror stuff with this Collider and the Jeffers site. So I love all that. But yeah, like I said, the first two seem very like lean and mean. They get right into it and you know what's happening. And this one, I'm like, what? I don't get what all this random stuff that he's throwing out there. So still love it. Still looking forward to finishing it. So yeah, I do have another one, but we can go around and get back to that.
Sure thing. Tracy.
Well, for movies, I don't think you guys want to talk about Hallmark Christmas movies, right?
I can always talk about those. I've been neck deep in them the last like 2 weeks.
But so this week I've been watching quite a few of those, but like for the sake of the podcast, we won't get into all of them. But if anybody needs any recommendations, like I've got some great ones for those. But I did rewatch. Matt
actually records them. Matt records them and watches them year round.
I like them.
They're great. They're fun. They probably knock out, like whoever's writing these and directing them, they probably knock out 10 the beginning of the year and record them all. And you know, whatever, that's, they do what they need to do. And it's a fun way to watch something goofy.
Yeah. Like there was one, so those of the two of you on here who are not watching them, you have to watch Holiday on Netflix, and then you have to tell me how much you loved it because it's amazing. It's funny.
Or what's the one that they've been doing? It's the oh my goodness, it's the one where they go and they all kind of have this theory, but it's like that journalist that goes to that weird country, falls in love with that's
the Christmas Prince.
Yes.
Yeah.
The third I keep making jokes because they had like in the third one, man, they made 3 of these, and they talk about like the basement dungeon having a ghost. So I like to mess with my family and talk about the ghosts in that one.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to, if you watch The Christmas Prince, you have to watch Christmas Prince, The Royal Wedding. And then The Christmas Prince, the Royal Baby or something like that?
Yeah. I think it's that one because they have to find like a will so the other country can't take it over. And
Rich and Mike are like, what is happening?
Hey, you know what? I watched Jingle Jangle last week, and I like that movie a lot. I watched The Christmas Chronicles 2 on Thanksgiving.
I haven't seen those, but you have to watch them for the hair.
Oh, totally.
Right? Yeah.
Or the Switch one, the Christmas Switch one with Vanessa Hudgens.
Oh, there's a new one. Did you watch the second one?
Oh, I did. So I know there's 3 Vanessa Hudgens in that one.
Yes, I know. And then Holiday Calendar. I mean, there's just so many you need to watch. I don't know. And then Christmas baking shows but other than that, I did rewatch The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Do you guys like that one?
That's a good one.
Yeah, that one I have seen.
It's just It's just perfect. I love it. It's scary. It's creepy. And now I can turn it on for like background watching when I'm doing something else because I think I've seen it like 3 times now. So what else? Scare Package on Shudder.
Yes. That one was fun.
Yeah. You know what though? So it's for those who don't know, it's an anthology of like little mini horror skits or whatever. And it takes place at a video store. Anyways, I love the first one.
Yes.
Maybe it was the second one. Not the one where the guy's basically, who is it? Michael Myers, but the one where they're in the woods.
Oh, God. Yeah, the goopy one.
Oh, that was amazing. It was full of like gore and people were getting splattered and there was lots of like off-color jokes. It was just, I could have watched a whole 2 hours of just that one.
That was amazing.
But
I'm the odd one out with Scare Package.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It's not like, I mean, I like Trick or Treat. I'd say this might be like my second favorite horror anthology movie. It was pretty good.
Yeah, I love the end one with that one where they're kind of like poking at all the tropes and they have it like all in like a science lab where they're like studying how people run when they're being chased and how long it takes before they trip. And they try to figure out like when a car can start because, you know, in every slasher movie, the car doesn't start right away and then the bad guy can get in there. And this one, they're trying to figure out how, like, what's the distance between the car and the monster before it doesn't work anymore. I was like, this is amazing.
Other than that, like, I mean, as far as books go, I haven't read anything this week. I know that's awful. I am currently reading, though. Hold on. I have my Goodreads back up here. It's by Daniel Barnett. It's his Nightmare books. Yeah, so I'm reading Nightfall right now. And so far, I have the first 3. And because I'm a terrible book reviewer, I hadn't gotten into it until like this week. So I'm kind of glad I have the other 2 because I think I might just keep going. Like, you know what I mean? Just read all 3 back to back.
He's a friend of the podcast. He's a good dude.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like I've read several of his books. My Hungry Friend has some great like cosmic horror in it, and then Longread is more like a grief horror. So yeah, I'm a fan. He has good stuff.
It's always tricky with series to determine if you're going to read them all back to back or kind of spread them out.
I think if the series is like hooks you right away, it's definitely good to just keep on going, especially with like the Nightmare Land books because they're kind of released like the Fearing, where it's more and more like novella-sized.
Oh,
so you can just go 1, 2, 3, 4 whenever the 4th one comes out.
I had a thriller or a suspense series that I started. Rachel Kane, the author, that she passed away, like 3 weeks ago now, 4 weeks?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had her series, Stillhouse Lake series, and I blazed through the first 3. And then I just needed a little break, I guess, not because they weren't good, but because I just, felt guilty about all of my other books sitting there. And so I stopped and read The Raven by Jonathan Janz, and then I'll get back to it soon, I hope.
Yes. I know it's always the curse when you have that stack of books to read and you're like, which one should I read? And then I feel bad for not reading the others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm overflowing with books I have to read. So.
And then there's all the books that we've bought in addition to all the arcs we have.
Oh, God.
Oh, goodness. I have too many. There's this one mailing list I'm on, and I'm going to have to email and say, go ahead and take me off your mailing list, please, because I literally have like a stack of 25 books that I can't. There's no way. Just from that one place. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can't do that.
Life of a reviewer.
I know.
Facts.
I know.
It's not as glamorous as it seems.
I mean, it's fun. It's a great problem to have, but it's also, I feel kind of bad. Like when I'm picking up a book that I've had for 8 months and I'm like, oops. Yeah. Sorry. I mean, especially this year, but I'm giving myself a lot of grace. So it doesn't really bother me that much, but I do feel bad.
I was able to finish one book this week, which I think as a fellow teacher, Tracy, you can attest at the horribleness of PD, where professional development is like the worst. I don't know if your school has you do professional development on half days, but.
Oh yeah. Like we've been lucky because we pushed our start date out till like the end of August. And so they smashed like 3 weeks full of PD in there. And so we don't have any 2-hour delays
I'm
we don't have any this
jealous.
Year. That's nice.
So I've discovered the joys of Kindle Cloud Reader. So during PD this last week, I started reading Dead Sea by Brian Keene because PD's on Zoom. So it's just like you keep PD on, you can still listen and do something else while you're going through it.
Listen in quote marks.
Yes. Oh no, I mean I paid attention. The thing is, though, is like
it sounds like it,
right?
The worst thing about it is half the people who present are not good at presenting.
Oh.
At least over Zoom, they're not good at presenting.
They just read you their PowerPoint slide.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's always fun.
So, and then they email you the PowerPoints when they're done. So it's like I could just read this on my own, anyways. But that being said, I started reading Dead Sea by Brian Keene, and I finished it yesterday. Nice. But this book, if you want a fun, pulpy zombie book, this is definitely one to read. It is very pulpy and a little bit ridiculous, but it's a lot of fun. It takes place in one of Brian Keene's many multiverses, and it focuses on a man named Lamar, who is a gay black man who's living in Baltimore when a zombie virus breaks out called Hamelin's Revenge, and zombie shenanigans happen. And he eventually finds himself on a boat with other people trying to survive the zombie apocalypse, where this strain of like virus that's causing the zombies to happen keeps on jumping from species to species.
Which covers because that was always one of the topics, like especially when zombies were getting big almost 20 years ago, was like, what would you do? And a lot of people are like, well, I'll just go on the water because they can't get to you. But in this story, he answers that question.
So does this one have human zombies with animal zombies, or?
You get human zombies. You have it starts off with rats. So like dead rats reanimate and begin biting people.
Oh,
that's how it spreads to like people. But then it affects lions and other animals. And they first thought the horse were immune, but then horses began turning into zombies. So you got zombie horses. Everything that's living and breathing can turn into a zombie.
That mean trees?
No, not trees.
Oh,
I should say living mammals. It's not like the Rising books. The Rising books, anything living turns into a zombie. That includes trees and plants.
I love zombie and post-apocalyptic fiction. So Keene's The Rising series is one I've been saving to like dig into soon. So I'm excited for that.
I would say The Rising is a lot of fun. I was in high school when those books came out, and that was my introduction to Keene. I was like 15 years old, and I was at the perfect age for those books. And even when I read Keene, it's like I get a sense of nostalgia. Like a lot of his stuff's just kind of like fun.
Yeah.
And he does good character work.
Yeah, his books are a blast. I need to read more of his stuff. I think I have like everything he's put out so far, but I just need to fucking read them.
Right.
And I will say, if you want to check out the Rising books, I know he's working on his final Rising book that's going to be coming out maybe next year sometime.
I hope so.
So you can put it on your stack of stuff to never read.
Exactly.
Pretty much, yeah.
And then one last thing for me is I am halfway through The Worm and His Kings by Haley Piper.
Yay.
Very
and
nice.
This book is phenomenal. If you like cosmic horror, it's a must-read.
I just ordered it, so hopefully I get it soon, and that'll probably be my next one.
Yeah, I love everything. So I first read The Possession of Natalie Glasgow by her, but when it was The Haunting of Natalie Glasgow, like 2 years ago or something. And I just love, I've read all of the published stuff, not the short stories that she has in all of these different places or whatever, but yeah, I like her stuff. She's good.
She's really good. Anything else from you guys, or should we dive into the topic?
I do have one more.
All right, Matt, take it away.
I started reading, I think it just came out, was a Star Wars anthology called From a Different Point of View. And it's a big one. It's got like 40 authors in it, and they all have stories kind of based on like side characters. in A New Hope. So it covered like the two stories that really stuck out so far that I've read is this one about the R4 droid. So this is going to be super dorky talk for everybody. But the R4 droid that kind of blows up so that R2-D2 can go with Luke to the moisture farm. So this story is about that droid, and it is the most like, I don't even know how to describe it. The person who wrote it, they like give you this horrible backstory to this poor droid. He's been like living in the sandcrawler for 4 years, at least that he knows of. They had erased his memory, and he's like on the verge of every day he's like, well, the Jawas are going to take me apart. The Jawas are going to take me apart. So he's like hiding in this nest of scraps so he doesn't get destroyed. And then when R2 and C-3PO get in there, R2 one night tries to dismantle him. And says, he's like, well, I need to be picked because I'm on this great mission, and you need to sacrifice yourself so I can go into this mission. And R4 is like, I've been here for years. You can't do this to me. And so then he's kind of facing that, and then eventually he does blow himself up. But it's just a like really sad, depressing story about this poor little droid that like is going to be killed at any moment. And then the other story is all about Sith paperwork, and how they have to like work the system, work the bureaucracy, so that one of the stormtroopers who was supposed to keep an eye out for escape pods didn't see it or didn't shoot it. And so, he's like, well, crap, Darth Vader's going to kill me. And so he goes to this guy and he's like, oh, you got to fill out these like 50 forms and then you'll be fine. And it was really fun. So if you're a Star Wars fan, it's a fun, like just goofy collection that covers like the most random characters and gives you a little different points of view. So it's a lot of fun.
Cool.
And that's it for me.
Awesome. I'll save it for next week, actually. Let's just jump into the topic at hand, the reason why Tracy has given us her Sunday morning. So, you worked on this anthology with Sci-Fi and Scary, right?
Yeah.
Would you want to tell our audience a little bit about this anthology?
Yeah, so I guess like earlier in the year, Laurel Hightower and Lillian were joking around on Twitter about tentacles, which if you follow us, I know, hey, inspiration comes from anywhere, I guess. And so they got into the conversation about like how tentacles might come from certain places on bodies, I guess. So, and then it just kind of snowballed, and we were like, you know what? Why don't we do a charity anthology, and then we'll take, we'll make sure we have a token payment for our authors because the money should flow to the writers, and whatever proceeds we give it to a couple of different charities. And so we just kind of decided to do it. I mean, at Sci-Fi and Scary, we've got Lillian and Gracie, and then there's me and Sam and Ollie and several others that, we were just like, yeah, let's do this. So we started. It was kind of crazy because none of us had ever put together an anthology before. I don't know. It's kind of a wild ride. Have you guys ever put together stories like that before? Or?
No, I was going to ask if this was your first one or not.
Oh, yeah. It was so... It's kind of, we were a little nervous. Like, well, what if nobody sends anything? It's not like we're paying professional rates or, putting anything out there. And we were pleasantly surprised.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always wonder how that process goes because, I mean, you probably do get quite a few, and this is anthologies in general, how they probably get a ton of authors sending stuff. And not only like that process, but like, how did you figure out what order to put it in?
Well, yeah. Well, first we had to get through this like big slush pile. And so I think it was, maybe it was Chris Golden or something had mentioned somewhere where one of the anthologies he worked on, they had a group of readers and then they rated them like, yes, no, maybe, or something like that. And then if a story got, like, if you have 5 readers and 3 of them said, absolutely no, then the story's gone. Like the other 2 don't even need to read it because it's already been voted out. It's done. So we had a first team of like readers that read all the slush, Like they just, and yeah. So, well, and we divvied it up. So like that way it wasn't like one person, each person didn't have to read like 300 stories. So we just kind of like divvied it up to different people. And if they thought it was decent enough and it qualified as body horror, because that was one thing, like we got some that were absolutely not body horror. And then they got moved up. And so I was a second tier reader. So I didn't have to read like all of them. I just had to read the second tier ones. And I think Lillian just kind of put them in a row. And then here's 10 for you, 10 for you, 10 for you. When you're done with those, let me know. I'll give you more. And then we ranked them. And then I wasn't part of figuring out the order. I did my second tier reading, and because I'm so busy at work, but we had enough people to where it was fine that I stepped back and somebody else stepped up and they figured out the order. But we have flash, medium, and longer fiction. So I think the way they tried to do it was try to keep the tone, like working with the tone of each stories. Don't have too many all the same. Don't have any like huge jarring jumps. And then split up the lengths too.
Sounds like you guys did a good job putting it together.
I hope so. Like I'm really excited about all the stories. I mean, it's a really diverse group of authors that we've got. And that's the other thing. Like when we were reading the stories, if we knew the author was like a female or a person of color, we might put a little note on it, after we read it, but we never looked it up beforehand. So we ended up with tons of all different kinds of diverse creators and authors and some first-time authors. It was cool.
That's great to hear.
You kind of mentioned body horror, so it's not specific to just tentacles.
No, it's not just tentacles.
Damn.
Sorry.
Lillian's anthology of tentacle porn.
Oh no. It was there.
Hey, I didn't say porn.
That you can find a few. You can find a few.
Oh, that's amazing.
I like the mixture though. Like there's some definite ones because it's sci-fi and scary. So we wanted to make sure there was a good mixture. So, they might have some sci-fi horror, some like straight horror. Like it's just a good mix, I think.
Now let's drag some people. Did you get any of the submissions that were just so far off the mark? Like what was rejected? And did any of those authors send you nasty emails?
Well, I think because of what happened with that Klein guy. You guys remember that from like last year who we reviewed one of his books, or we were going to review his book. So he sent Lillian this huge email and it says right on the site that if you act like a jerk, we're going to call you out. So
yeah.
Yes, I remember that.
So we didn't get anything like that this year. I think people were probably kind of like, oh yeah, maybe we won't say anything to that.
That's
site.
Disappointing.
Yeah. I know Max Booth always has fun ones to share. I was hoping maybe you guys would have some.
Well, I think if I would have been a first tier reader, because I didn't read all of the slush, that maybe I would have had a couple. But there were definitely a few where it was like I finished reading even the second tier one, because the first tier readers had so much to get through that if it looked good, it was body horror, it moved on. Where I was just kind of like, this is a story? What?
I had that same experience on like a short story contest I was in, where it's like I would read the story and I was like, is this a story?
It has words.
There wasn't. I mean, I'm fine if there's like no specific plot. Like I can handle that. Like it's sometimes flash fiction, you just get a little snapshot of something.
Yeah.
But this was just the alphabet on a page. I don't. I hate to drag, and I can't even remember the author, and I never would mention it anyway. If I
Donald
did,
Trump?
Oh, I gotta tell you, man.
Well, I guess it's heartening to hear that. It sounds like people were on their best behavior for this one, which is encouraging.
They were great.
Like, there's like two things with that. One is like those stories you were just talking about. I like fret over every submission and I'm like going over it through much. Like I don't like just to have the nerve to just be like, oh, it's cool. I'm just going to send this. Still take it. And then also to like, and not, it sounds like you didn't get very much of this or at all, but like to send a reply to a rejection, like I just assume, and it kind of sounds like that they're so busy, whoever's editing this anthology, that they're clearly not going to have time to read an email. And so it's like, what process are you like, oh, it's cool. If I send them this letter regards to their rejection, maybe they'll take it. Maybe they'll take my story now. It's like, what?
No, don't do that.
Don't do that.
No.
It's just ridiculous.
You need to reconsider.
Right. It's like, what are you assuming? Like, you're going to have some great argument that they're going to just be like, oh, you're right. I didn't see that. I'll take your story now.
But my story that didn't have anything to do with the proposed topic was the best thing that was ever submitted to anywhere. You guys are insane.
How become you didn't take my pizza story for your Body Horror Anthology?
I know. I keep thinking about that for this, for Gambino's anthology he's putting out right now. I'm like, how soon before we're going to start seeing no holiday Hallmark horror stories?
I co-wrote one for that anthology. Hopefully it gets accepted.
Me too.
See, you guys need to watch Hallmark movies because otherwise,
Yes.
I mean, come on. Gotta do your
I know what you're
research.
writing about.
Oh, man. I had so much banter and so much funny little, like, almost touching and magical moments that they have in those Hallmark movies. I was like, finally, it's paying off.
You're a scholar. Yes.
Like, I know the meet cute and the goofy misunderstandings. I can do this.
What was it? I was thinking too, the whole idea of like reading a story and have it going nowhere is like, have you read the new Adam Neville collection?
No.
Mm-mm.
Tracy?
Nope.
The reviews for that have been crazy, where it's like the collection it's a bunch of short stories that are just describing the aftermath of some sort of event. So like there's no plot, there's no characters. It's just like a vivid description of an area after this like monster attack has happened, or this parasite has taken over people, or like something crazy's happened. And it's just him describing the aftermath. And the reviews are either like 5 out of 5, this is brilliant, or 1 out of 5, this is fucking stupid. Like there's been no in between.
That makes me think, I don't know if you've ever heard of this book. I think it's called The World Without Us. It's a nonfiction book.
I've read that book.
Did you? Yeah. And it sounds kind of like that. The whole concept of this book is that, like, what would happen to the world if humans were no longer around? And it's really interesting, like, what the plants would do. And, like, even, like, he goes into detail about all of the, like, cemeteries and how, like, the embalming fluid would just, how that, like, will ruin the ground around it. And what, like, it's really interesting. But that's, anyway, when you talked about the Adam Neville book, I was like, oh, that sounds just like that.
That sounds like Lee Murray has a collection of stories out called Grotesque, I think. Anyways, and there's a story in there where like something happens and people, you don't get to see the happening. I mean, it kind of happens, but it's off page, and people start like their bodies start melding with technology, like whatever happens to be around them. So if you're on a bus, the bus seat becomes part of your body, or your cell phone, if you happen to be listening to it, like is embedded in your head. I don't know.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I love body horror stuff. So I was like, yes, that one's really good. That was really good. I can't remember the title because, well, I can't. So,
well, you're in good company because we all love body horror here.
Yes.
Yay.
And we can't remember anything either.
Very true.
At least I can.
Well, no, I came prepared. I wrote down a list in crayon,
good.
nonetheless.
Well,
So.
what's your list?
Man, well, I don't know. I have a question though. First, do you guys think that there are crossovers into body horror? Like, what about werewolf? That's body horror, isn't it?
Yeah. So I've been thinking about that too. Like, I feel like that is, I mean, like, I guess that's a good maybe jumping off point. What's the definition of body horror? And then we can.
I would say werewolf can be body horror depending on the perspective of the story being told. So if the perspective of the story being told is someone who's been afflicted with the curse of turning into a werewolf, right? that would definitely be body horror from the perspective of the main character. Because, like, they're losing control over their own body's morphing in front of them. It's gross and weird and creepy, and that would definitely be body horror. I would say if it's told from the perspective of the werewolf being in the background, it wouldn't really be a body horror movie or a body horror story unless we're given that perspective, or if the movie shows us a really gross transformation scene.
So like American Werewolf in London, that's kind of body horror then because you see it happening.
Yeah.
And then like Underworld, it's not because they're just werewolves. Or like Harry Potter's not because it's just kind of, I mean, I guess you kind of see the Harry Potter transformation, but it's not as goopy as like American Werewolf.
American Werewolf in London's really goopy. But yeah, no, that's, I would say like American Wolf in London, yes. Underworld, no.
That's a good question because you can kind of, like in my view, like body horror is when there's like a lot of weird stuff happening to your body. So like, you know, because like you could think about that like for vampires because they're transforming, they're growing teeth and their eyes are changing color and stuff like that. I don't know if that would be considered body horror, but like the movie Slither, I don't know if you've seen that, but
I love Slither.
Well, Michael Rooker, when he's changing, that is total body horror.
Yes. So. Slither has a good amount of body horror in it.
Yeah. So I think that, in my opinion, that's what it is. It has to be kind of like this horrible. You're witnessing this horrible thing happening to the skin and the body parts, and like it looks painful.
Yeah, there has to be some measure of appallingness to it. You know, like vampires, their teeth change and their eye colors maybe change. That's not really appalling to me.
Yeah.
I don't find that particularly unsettling or grotesque. I think that is what would separate body horror from other mainline creatures. Like a werewolf would be much easier to accept as body horror than vampires.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at something like The Fly, I would say that's definite body horror, whereas Interview with the Vampire is not.
Or even if we're going to stick on a werewolf, if you look like at the 1950s werewolf movies, I wouldn't consider those body horror because, I mean, it's partly due to what they could do at the time. But like when you're kind of just seeing hair grow and the face grow fangs, I mean, like, obviously that's horrible kind of to think about, but it's not the same as, again, American Werewolf in London or like The Howling, because like those bodies are like splitting apart and things are coming out of it where like, so I think it depends on how it's told and or seen.
I think there's a lot of context to that.
I feel like visually, like the old Universal Monster Werewolf movies, for the time, the effects are really good.
Yeah.
But they haven't aged well.
Yeah.
But I would agree, like the 80s horror is like when special effects really took off. And that's when we began to see a lot of like body horror in movies.
Yeah.
Is with like The Fly and all those David Cronenberg movies, Videodrome. Yeah, there's a lot. The thing.
But how about you, Tracy? What's your definition?
I don't know. I mean, I think, definitely. I mean, I'm trying to think more like, definitely, I agree on The Fly. That's body horror and all that stuff. I guess it just depends on, like you guys said, how it's presented when it comes to stuff like a werewolf. You know, like is this like how in depth does the writer go? Like, is it a slow change and all of a sudden they start noticing like because I feel like depending on who's reading it, like the sudden presence of more coarse hair and then they see their fingernails are getting longer. Depending on who it is and how they write that person's like psychology. It could be pretty terrifying,
True.
Just kind of, I don't know.
Very true.
I think, I feel like in movies, they don't have a lot of room. Like, I guess they could portray it, but writers really have a chance to make it as horrible or as normal as they want to. Like in Mongrels, that's not body horror,
Yeah.
But, that's it's just a werewolf story. I don't even know if it's a werewolf story, coming of age, of course. But I don't know. The reason I asked was, like Chris Golden has a new book coming out in December called Red Hands.
Yes.
I'd say there's some body horror in that. Mike, you've read it. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah? I don't want to go into spoilers, but the ending in particular, I would say there's some real good body horror going on in that
really want to
finale.
read that.
Oh, it's so good.
It's amazing. I haven't read, and I had never read his books before. I was like, holy, I need the rest of them.
Yeah.
Chris Golden's really good.
Yeah. And that's why I was just curious, like, because I started thinking, like, what about cannibalism? Because, there's a couple I could mention about that, but then I don't know. That's.
I think that you can kind of get to the point where you're parsing it too much, where it's like, well, what about zombies? Because their bodies are getting pretty fucked up and they're tearing apart other people's bodies. That's pretty horrific. But I don't know. I don't even know how to say this. I was going to say a lot of it comes from an internal action or something that the characters have done to themselves.
Yeah, I was just wondering that, like, does it need to be like a transformation, or, for instance, like, because we had read Urban Gothic and all those creations, would those be considered body horror because they're human, but they're like horribly disfigured monster things? It's so...
Yeah, see, that one I wouldn't have classified as body horror just because they have fucked up bodies. I don't know that necessarily constitutes it. But I think if you look at something like The Fly, where he has accidentally inflicted this on himself and he can't control what's happening to him, I would say that's what makes that body horror.
Yeah.
I would say one aspect of, like, what makes body horror is like losing control over your own body, or like your ability to view your body the same way. A lot of it has to do with like control, appearance, transformation, but it deals with heavily like the person himself or herself.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the stories we've gotten, a lot of the stories that I see and that I want to see more of have to do with women and transformations. Like birth is probably one of the biggest places where, if you want to explore body horror, I mean, come on. I mean, it's right there. One of the stories that I have written down is a short story called Purse by Chesia Burke. And I'm not going to say anything about it because it's a really short story, but it definitely deals with women and how bodies change and things like that. So I think, with body horror, you kind of have to include like changes that you don't inflict upon yourself, like, different things like that, especially for women.
Yeah.
Because of stuff like that.
I feel like a lot of it just really dives down to like the perspective of how the story is being told.
Yeah.
Like, have you guys ever seen, this is an obscure movie, but have you guys ever seen Tetsuo the Iron Man? It's a Japanese movie from the 90s.
No.
Nope.
No.
If you like body horror, check it out. It's really fucked up. It's about this dude who's kind of like your average like office worker, salaryman, and something begins to happen to him, and he is trying to transform himself into a machine, and he begins like sticking metal things into his body to like transform his body into something else. And it is a really good body horror movie, but it's pretty fucked up.
I feel like I've not read as many body horror as I've seen, and so I'm trying to think like if anyone has any books that they can think of. Like I'm trying to think like with Clive Barker, because I know he does a lot of that kind of stuff, and I'm trying to think of like Books of Blood, what I've read in there that was body horror, and I just can't think of any off the top of my head. So I don't know if any of you have read any.
I've been trying to rack my brain on that too.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I have, but the way this week has been going, my brain is completely fried. I don't know.
Yeah, because like it's and maybe this is kind of like what Tracy, what you're talking about, like where it's almost a perspective of the reader and also a perspective of the writer. What is in there that's kind of body horror, where like visually in movies you can you see it, and so you're like, okay, this is a horrible thing happening to this body, like, and we've listed off some movies and I could think of other ones, but like reading wise, I'm just like, man, what have I read that had that kind of stuff in it? Like I could think of, and I think this was a lost episode or maybe it wasn't, but like the Immortal Hulk
That would definitely
there was some
count.
body horror in Immortal Hulk.
There's
a lot
some
of it.
Yeah, there's some pretty horrible stuff happening, even to not even with Bruce Banner turning into the Hulk, but like the Hulk himself. And there's some really grotesque imagery in that. But like, otherwise, I'm just like, what have and I'm sure I have, but all I can think of are movies. So like, I'm thinking of like even like Creepshow when Stephen King turns into that grass person. I mean, that's body horror. That's pretty horrible thinking about.
And I think it's easier for body horror to be conveyed in a visual manner.
Yeah.
So we can list 100 movies of body horror. It's a little bit harder to figure out books, I think, or at least
even
recall
comic
them.
books too. I can think of comic books that like body horror stands out with as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Immortal Hulk, the artist there drew a lot from The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing. There is a lot of imagery in there that parallels what was going on in that Carpenter movie.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
And
I just have like a couple. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you can go, Tracy.
No, I just have I wrote I noticed that most of the stuff I wrote down were some short stories, but I do have a few books. What about The Rust Maidens by Gwendolyn Keist?
I haven't read that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can put that in body horror.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we have this group of girls whose bodies are starting to rust. I mean, I'm not giving anything away, obviously, and change and form and what's causing them to change. And it's definitely like a coming of age, and it's body horror because their bodies are going through these things. And it kind of goes back to that, what I was talking about earlier about how, with girls and females, why are they changing? What's caused them to change? Why are they like turning to metal, basically. Then I've got like a fun one. This is Super Ghost by Scott Cole.
I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I was like, oh, well, I have to make sure I mention it because I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it, at least, from what I've seen. But basically there's this mad scientist. And if you want like your 80s and 90s body horror in book form, this is it, because he deals with phantom limbs. And he goes to remove the phantom limbs, which you just have to buy into it. And then he takes the phantom limbs away. And so it's body horror in that things are still being removed. I guess, with the phantom limb phenomenon, they can still feel it. So he's going to take away their pain by actually taking away and then it just goes full mad scientist later on. It's amazing. Like, it's just so good. Like I would classify it as body horror for sure.
Yeah.
I like that one.
That sounds
This is like a fun book.
Yeah, and one that just came to mind was, and I had talked about this a while ago, but the Silver Scream anthology. The last story in that is about a drive-in and like all this like stuff that they show on screen. At the end of it is a huge scene where all these like evangelical people are morphing into scenes from these horror movies and grindhouse movies and stuff like that. So that's one that came to mind, and they're just like turning in these horrible monster things, and it looks painful, and it's horrible kind of seeing it. So I guess I have read one.
Yeah,
I think I was going to say I think the Drive-In from Joe Lansdale has some elements of body horror in it too.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Have you guys read Geek Love by Catherine Dunn?
Yes.
I need to.
Yes, you're right.
Body horror.
Oh man, that book, I love that book, and that's I'm assuming it's all the amputation stuff to make themselves because they're following that kind of like
there's
thing.
That, and then the things that the parents do to make their kids unusual. Yeah, I mean that one. I had to. Well, I'm part of Ladies of Horror Fiction, and that was one of Lori and Tony's favorite books, and Jen's, and so we all read it.
Yes,
it was amazing. It's really good.
I love that book. I try to sneak in Arturo into almost like that name anyway into like a lot of my stories because I just love that. Like the whole concept is like this, for everyone who hasn't read it yet, is like it's like a traveling circus, and they have basically they kind of have like this freak show, and the parents are, like Tracy just said, are making their kids into these kind of creations by doing different horrible things. And then it slowly turns into this like almost a religion where they're bringing all these people in and kind of telling them like they're not they're going to reach their full potential if they start like doing stuff to their bodies. And then like you kind of get a current day thing. It's so good. I think when I read, because Chuck Palahniuk had like, I don't know, this is probably 20 years ago. He had like a nonfiction collection, and that was Geek Love he talked about that being one of his favorite books and one of his bigger inspirations. And reading it, because it came out in the 80s, when you read the Geek Love, you can definitely see where Chuck Palahniuk kind of like got his style and just like a lot of his themes of like kind of going against society and stuff like that. So it's a great book if you haven't read it. Catherine Dunn.
Oh, yeah. And then I think, what's funny is that a lot of the stories we got for Twisted Anatomy, and I'd say quite a few of them that made the cut, have to deal with body dysmorphia, which, and we have several stories from trans writers and things like that. We're just dealing with transformation and change and what it's like to be stuck in a body that's not the right one and things like that. And I think Geek Love, has all of that in there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. That was a great
yes. One. I did one right. The only other ones I have are like Wasp and Snake by Olivia Llewellyn is a great short story. I listened to it on the Come Join Us by the Fire anthology.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And then That Which Does Not Kill You by Lucy Snyder. That's a really good one. Like the body continues on after things have happened to it, and what is that like? And it's much more subtle. It's much more, I don't know, kind of laid back rather than the gore of like Super Ghost or the The Fly or things like that. But it's definitely still body horror. I like the range of it.
Yeah. No, and it's neat because you can do so much with this concept. And you've brought up a lot of the great ideas like with women and body dysmorphia and like, and that's one of the things we've kind of talked about previous episodes of just like the way you can take horror stories and different genres of horror and make it into telling something more. And this is actually a great one that you can do. You can tell a lot, like a deeper story while at the same time showing like kind of weirdness happening to a body. So it's a cool genre that and as people have seen, like we have some suggestions, but it feels like, and maybe there's a lot more out there, and I'm just not reading those, but it's definitely an area that could be explored more.
Yeah, it's one of the hopes that we had for Twisted Anatomy, which is the title, is that for those of us who love body horror, well, let's try to put several all in one place. So I don't know. I hope people like it. There's some really good ones in there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, I love it. I mean, like, again, going back to the movies and thinking about just like the way that you can do some really crazy stuff visually. I mean, we've talked about a lot of them, but there's like Society. If you haven't seen that movie's bonkers. There's a scene where somebody's face is on their ass and they talk.
Society is ridiculous.
Yes. There's this one. It was like a sci-fi movie, and it's all about this guy, like some goofy guy, and he wants to be Spider-Man, so he gets injected by spider venom. It like radiates spider venom, and instead of turning into a superhero, he turns into a spider. And that one's really goopy because it kind of follows The Fly a lot, where he's slowly transforming and he's just getting weirder and weirder. So that's a good one.
It's a bit more abstract in the sense of body horror, but I talked about a few weeks ago. Possessor by Brandon Cronenberg, I think would qualify.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the whole idea of like you as a person possessing somebody else's body, but that person is still like fully conscious of them losing control of their body, and all they can do is watch their body do things that they're not in control of.
I just thought of is, and I've brought it up before, but is Let the Right One In. Specifically, I can't think of what the girl's name is, but the little girl vampire, her in the book, she kind of has a familiar. And I mentioned this being a scary scene, I think, in our 50th, but there's a whole scene of him getting really goopy and monstrous and still living, but he's dead. And it's just this horrible scene where where the main boy's brother is locked in this like closet with him, and it's just that's one I just thought of that is pretty horrible body horror. Watching this like familiar morph into this thing, so that's one too.
And the story I would want to read is from that perspective.
Yes.
What's it feel like to your skin bubble and all of that? Like, give me that. I want to know that.
Yes.
You know, I do want to make sure that I get in like before, I don't know how close we are to the end, like the charities that we are giving money to. So Lillian's daughter has pulmonary arterial hypertension. It's not just high blood pressure. It's like it has to deal with the heart and the lungs. Well, anyways, so because of, that's close to her heart, we will be donating to the Pulmonary Hypertension Association. And then we're splitting them 50-50 with the National Domestic Violence Hotline to support women and men who experience domestic violence. We just figured that both of those charities would be a good place to send some extra money. Should we get some?
Yeah, no, that's great.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was nice to do something that meant something to us. And then there are so many people, that we know and don't know of that have experienced, different varieties of domestic violence. So we figured that was a good place to start. We managed to grab a fantastic cover. Were you able to see it when we did the cover reveal for it?
No, crap.
No, I didn't. I must have missed that.
I saw
Okay,
it.
well,
It was great.
it's good, isn't it? So
It is. That was Don Noble.
Yeah, he does.
Don Noble
amazing
does
work.
great work.
Yeah. So he's, for those who don't know, it's Don Noble. He's with Rooster Republic, and they were having a sale, and it's a charity anthology, and we're putting up our own money for this. So we were like, Lillian found it, she put it up there, and they were like, yes. And I saw it. I was like, well, of course. Like, I'm glad you chose that one. But yeah, I'm so excited. It's good. It's only ebook for now. We want to see how well it does and all that stuff, because it's expensive to put out a book. Did you guys know that? I learned all about wraparound covers and all kinds of okay.
Yeah. There are cheaper undertakings one could take on than producing and publishing.
I bet.
Speaking of the table of contents, can you tease us any of the stories?
Well, I mean, I right in front of me right now, I just have the authors, but I will say that you're going to see a new story from Sina Palaio.
Nice.
Haley Piper.
Awesome.
Excellent.
J. Danielle Dorn, R.J. Joseph, Sarah Tantlinger. We've got some great ones in here.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, Alexander C. Bailey. Just a bunch of Madeline Swan. So we've got lots of a range here. There's some quiet ones. There's bizarro stuff. There's some kind of like heading towards extreme stories in there. I don't know. I'm curious to see what people think of it,
I'm excited to read it when it comes out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
this is exciting.
Yeah, we try to keep a really good balance of lengths too. So we've got a good amount of flash fiction in there, some medium length ones, and then the long ones aren't even, that long. Like it's not like there's no novella sized ones in here, things like that. And I personally don't read a whole lot of anthologies because I don't know. It takes me so long to get through them. But I don't know. I'm kind of excited about having there's a few I haven't read that are in there just because how it worked out. But yeah.
So I just thought of two more before. I know we kind of wrapped that up. I just thought of two more stories. One, and this one's like off the wall, but is totally body horror. And that is it. And we talked about Tim Allen. So that's really funny that we did is the Santa Claus.
Improvement?
Yeah, not Home Improvement, but the Santa Claus. That is total body horror. He is slowly turning into Santa. He is growing hair. We talked about hair werewolves. His stomach is distending, and his mind is so warped that he can tell if somebody's naughty or nice. That is total body horror. I can't argue otherwise. And the second one is I just thought of Thomas Ligotti's story. And Rich, you might remember this one. It's I can't remember the title of it, but it's this like boarding house, and this guy's staying there, and and there's like a crazy like witch lady that lives there that owns it, and basically turns him into a jester head on a stick. Do you remember that story?
I remember that one.
So like he is conscious. He knows what he's existing and he's thinking, and it's just his head on this stick, and she like moves it around and talks to it and makes it do all this stuff. And it's a little weirder. There's not, as we've been talking about, all the goop and blood and stuff like that, but his body is changed, and this lady has done this to lots of others. Actually, he did it to himself. He put on the hat. For some reason, he felt like he needed to put on this jester hat, and that's when he turned into this like jester staff.
That's his problem.
That's his problem. Yes.
That's his problem.
If we're going to be looking at some goopy things, how about the Cipher?
Oh yeah,
yeah. The Cipher definitely has some elements of that.
The dude's hand gets pretty fucked up. That was definitely some uncomfortable reading there.
Yes, that is. Well, that, and you think about it, like with the insects turning into weird shapes, and like it leaves it open where if they like went into that hole, would they have turned into weird goofy shapes too? So good call.
Thank you.
Matt mentioned the Santa Claus. So there's a webcomic I like a lot. One Giant Hand is the name of the webcomic. Okay. And he did a Santa Claus one for Tim Allen's The Santa Claus. And I'm just going to read the part of it, but it begins with Tim Allen and his son. Tim Allen goes, "I killed him, Billy." And then Billy goes, "What's wrong, Dad? What's wrong with Santa?" And then Billy goes, "But I loved him." And then Tim Allen goes, "No, you didn't. You feared him. That pig sat on his throne at the North Pole, judging us, making us grovel for the trinkets he drolled out, made us his slaves. I have freed mankind from his tyranny. Remember, Billy, no gods, no masters." And then the next panel, he's transforming into Santa Claus. And he goes, "What is happening to me? I'm becoming Santa." And then he hands his gun to Billy. He goes, "Take my gun. You have to shoot me." And then Billy's crying, going, "Dad, I can." He just goes, "Do it." And then it ends.
See, there is crossover between Hallmark and horror. I mean,
absolutely.
Oh my gosh, you totally could.
This new anthology, I'm excited. Like the one that Gavina is working on, it should be amazing.
I think it
should be. I got my fingers crossed on my story.
Yes, me too.
But I hope you guys get in. That'll be fun.
Oh my gosh. I have some body horror in my story now that I think about it. So yeah, I guess it affected me.
I'm happy that like horror fiction's embracing body horror. I also feel part of it is because a lot of the people who are writing now, one, they're a lot of writing about their issues, but they're also people who grew up on like The Thing and like all those 80s movies. Mm-hmm. When they're publishing now. So it's like a lot of this early horror they were consuming is finding its way into the fiction they're writing.
Yeah, we grew up watching all these gory movies. We're like, hey, now I can write about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, have you guys read Mike's book? Definitely. Yeah. Hello, Broken Shells, 80s, 90s horror.
I don't know.
I thought you were going to mention the new one.
My horror is very quiet and tasteful.
Yes.
Yes.
Have you read Born of the Deep yet, Tracy?
Yes. That's the first one, right?
That's the second one.
Nope, haven't read the second one yet. That's one of those that I've had for 8 months, and I'm sorry, Mike.
That's okay. No pressure.
The Resurrectionist was the first one.
But yes, the eggs and the frog lady thing. It's total body horror.
Broken. Oh, it was crunchy and gross, and I loved it. It was just.
Broken Shells is a good read.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great one. Mike's like, go, stop.
Yeah, right.
We need to have more guests who can butter me up on this show.
Very good, very good. Well, I loved coming on, guys. This was fun.
It was.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
And give us the title again.
It's Twisted Anatomy.
Twisted Anatomy.
Coming out in February
Very
2021.
Good. Awesome.
I can't wait to dive into it. And where can our listeners get in touch with you, Tracy?
They can find me on Twitter mostly. I have Instagram, but I've been kind of slacking there lately. But it's the same both places. It's at Tracy, Tracy _ Reads, Reads 79.
Awesome. And Matt, what about you?
I am on Twitter at BrandenburgDM.
And Mike?
Twitter at MikeH5856, and they can hit up my website at michaelpatrickhicks.com.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Rudy53088. Be sure to give our podcast a follow at Into Staring, and make sure to rate and comment on the different streaming podcast platforms that we're on. That way we can help spread this abyss around until we consume all. But this is Richard Gerlach. Oh, Matt.
I was just gonna say, if you if you know of any body horror, let us know. We're fans and we want to read and see more. So tell us about it.
Definitely. You can tweet at us. We'll be sure to write it down.
Yes.
And this is Richard Gerlach saying, keep staring.
Hey everybody, it's Kevin Goatee.
It's Kevin Israel.
And you're listening to Gutting the Sacred Cow on the Project Entertainment Network. Hey, Kevin, what exactly is Gutting the Sacred Cow?
Gutting the Sacred Cow is a podcast where we invite comedians and talented people every episode to come on and trash a movie that you probably love or someone you know loves.
That's right. Our guests have trashed such films as Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Gone with the Wind, Grease, even Star Wars. Can you imagine the balls on that guy? Did he succeed?
I cannot.
Yeah, well, listen and you'll find out. But this is Kevin Goatee and Kevin Israel for Gutting the Sacred Cow.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.